but with the power of the birth plan and then knowing it's all just going to be thrown up in the air, the beautiful thing is that you are still at the center of all of it. I remember with my second child, I had him at home and the doula said there was some problem. We were making baby soup. We were supposed to have the water. I was going to give birth in the pool and it was hot. My husband had left the heater on and it was really hot. So he had run to the bodega to get ice to cool down the pool. And I was ready to give birth. And the doula and the midwife, they just kind of sat back and the doula turns to the midwife. She said, she won't give birth until he comes back, right? Because I was in control of that. And this is what we realize in this moment of like power. This is my body. We are co-creating this birth, me and this child. And here's how we're going to do it.
Hey everybody, it's Nathan Riley, host of the Holistic OBGYN podcast. If you don't know me, I am an OBGYN with all the normal credentials, and I decided to leave the conventional model of medicine because I wasn't finding that the tools that I was imbued with after investing nearly $500,000 into my education, which was roughly 14, 15 years, allowed me to really help people in the ways that I wanted to help them. If you layer on administrative nightmares, financial constraints, pressure from insurance companies and other corporate interests in medicine, the path to healing through the allopathic model is fraught with pitfalls. And so when I was just out of residency, I moved to San Diego for a fellowship in hospice and palliative medicine. And I was also working part-time, but I was doing 24-hour shifts while a fellow at UC San Diego. And those part-time shifts were in obstetrics and gynecology. I was fresh out of residency, pretty darn good surgical skills. I was great at helping support women in childbirth, and I needed a job to make some extra money because we were broke. And I got a job at Scripps Encinitas. It was an amazing hospital to have a baby, to be a doctor in. I felt very, very supported there. As much as I talk shit on the system, that was I remember while I was there, I said, man, if I'm ever going to work in a hospital, I hope it's one like this. And so props to the Scripps Encinitas crew. Anyways, while I was there, there was a local doc named Nick Kapitanakis who asked me to cover his practice so his family could go to Greece. He was in private practice, really great guy. Hey, Dr. Nick. And I covered his practice for almost 3 weeks. And during that coverage time, I received a strange phone call from somebody I didn't know, but they were trying to call Dr. Cap's practice. And since I was covering his practice, the call was redirected to me. And the person on the other end was a woman named Angie. Her last name was Czech, and she needed some help. So I met her in the hospital. I supported her through her birth process. There was a man in the room named Paul Czech. Didn't know who these people were, but I later found out. And since then, of course, we've become very, very near and dear friends. That they have this massive holistic lifestyle coaching practice, and they were teaching people to do all of the things that I knew we needed in allopathic medicine before, during, and after pregnancy, especially for both the mother and the father and for the kids that we're raising. And what I came to realize and appreciate about what Paul, Angie, and Paul's other wife, Penny, have done in the world is that they're teaching the things that doctors don't have the time or the willingness to learn how to implement in the care of people. And it's not rocket science. It's actually getting down to like 6 foundational principles. And over time, the Czech Institute has trained a variety of just such high caliber coaches who come from medicine, and they come from chiropractics, and they come from nutrition, and they come from all over the world with their different modalities and specialties in order to refine their skills and go out into the world and provide with people with truly holistic care on the physical, the mental, emotional, and spiritual levels. And 2 of those individuals are my guests today on the podcast. Harvey and Karina Krepp are both Czech practitioners. And they have a new book that they've just released called The Way Holistic, which we will link in the podcast description, where they really apply the check principles, what they bring into their own practices as holistic health practitioners. They bring this into now the parenting space, the motherhood space, the fatherhood space. And when they sent me their book, I was like, okay, another book. But I started reading, I was like, yes, this is the type of language that we need. We need people like this in the space, because there's a lot of people talking about data and talking about pharmaceuticals and the pros and cons of God knows what, hormone therapy or whatever else. And everybody wants to be right. But it really still boils down to, how are you eating? How are you sleeping? How are you moving? Are you keeping solid emotional boundaries? Are you taking care of yourself? Are you working with your shadow? Are you able to identify what things trigger you and why they trigger you? This is really what a holistic approach to health looks like, even at the foundational level. It can go deeper and deeper and deeper, and they do. But some of the questions we get into on the show are I think, pretty easy to understand, but very, very hard to implement. For example, how can we embrace this tendency for all of us to slip into the victim archetype, blaming somebody else? And how can we take a personal accountability for the life or the birth that we've co-created? We get into that in this episode. I asked them about why it's so, like, why does it even matter how babies come into the world? And if you've been listening to this podcast, you're going to know, like, you probably think you know what's coming. But fortunately, people are starting to talk about this, and they're starting to apply their unique gifts and specialties to this question. And as I always say, if we want to change the world, we have to start with getting birth right, which is a tall task given how medicalized it's become, especially in the United States. We talk about conscious parenting and how we can enforce a sense of personal responsibility in our children. We talk about soul contract and how this is a nihilistic bypass. This is actually just an acknowledgement that you're not just you, and there's not just the collective consciousness, but there's a unique self, your unique self, that is a part of an integral part, a unique gift that you bring to the world that is also a part of the collective consciousness. We're going to be going deeper into that question specifically when you hear from Mark Gaffney, a Hebrew mystic, in the coming months. So this conversation is wide-ranging. It's beautiful. They are very, very fun to talk to, and they clearly take care of themselves, because they seem to have a sort of cosmic giggle around all of this, understanding that this is deeply important work, but it's also not easy. So I think you're going to love this conversation with Heather and Karina. I hope you'll check out their book, The Way Holistic. And if you're interested in trying to understand more about, some of the philosophies that they're bringing in, I highly recommend going to the Czech Institute and taking their online holistic lifestyle coaching program, level 1. It's HLC1. I have a link on my website. It's belovedholistics.com/shop. It's no discount or anything. I just believe in Paul and Angie and Penny's work so much. And the multitude of Czech practitioners in my life, Sarah Gustafsson, Alex Rybczynski, Kyle Kingsbury, Jason Picard. I mean, a lot of these, Chase Ramey, Mimi Lindquist, a lot of these people are just doing such good work that it's hard for me to not saturate you with just how vital some of this, this information is. You hear about the importance of drinking clean water, organic food, but if you really, really want to appreciate how much time and energy the Czech facilitators and the faculty and Paul and Angie and Penny themselves have put into this work, I really just highly recommend taking the program. It's been it was very validating for me, because I was talking about this stuff and all these experts, so to speak, in medicine were telling me this is silly. Just put them on metformin, or just put them on blood pressure meds or whatever else. The official sponsors of this episode are WeNatal, which is my preferred prenatal vitamin. You can go to wenatal.com/beloved. And if you add a bottle of their Omega DHA Plus using this unique link, as a listener of the show, they're throwing in that fish oil for free. So go and check them out. They're very eco-conscious. They're very mind-body connected. It's a small company that is just doing great work. Dr. Hyman and I are both behind this brand. There's a lot of decent prenatal vitamins out there. There's very few that are stellar, and this is obviously my favorite. Very, very happy that they continue to support the show. And then Immune Intel AHCC, active hexose correlated compound, was brought to the United States direct to consumer by my friend Mimi Lindquist, who also co-created our clear and free, your persistent solution, your holistic solution to persistent HPV. She and I have been down this HPV cervical dysplasia rabbit hole now for years, and we created this program based on the results that she and I were both seeing with this product, specifically women who had this persistent HPV signal, which, by the way, I don't think HPV causes cervical cancer. I think it's the consequence of abnormal cells developing. Excuse me. But I think that you'll appreciate that if you get into the program. But just a bottle of this stuff or two, if you've got that pesky abnormal pap or a pesky HPV swab that's just continued to be positive and you're not sure what to do, you can try the Immune Intel, 2 to 3 capsules twice a day for a couple months, and I'm sure you're going to be in better shape. And the way that it helps with this is to remember that the immune system is helpful for not just fighting off infection or integrating viral transmission from the environment, but also wound healing. It's your first line of of prevention, so to speak, around cancer. Your immune cells, your immune system is operating at all times of the day to try to get your body restored and recovered, to heal and to make sure that infections don't riddle your body. So Immune Intel AHCC is also a sponsor of the show. I hope you'll go to themedicine.com. That's THEMEDICIN.com. And if you use code beloved10, you'll save 10% on your purchase of Immune Intel AHCC. It's a beautiful product. I have absolutely no qualms with promoting either of these brands. I have a lot of companies reach out and they want me to promote all kinds of things, but I'm sticking with these two because they are just rock solid, created and operated through the highest quality control by really, really good humans whose hearts are really in this sort of new transition to a new world. I think we can all feel much more is much more resident with our hearts and what we're desiring to see for our children. You might notice that there's a little bit of a wheeze in my throat. I'm a super healthy guy, right? What's this guy doing coughing up chunks? Well, interestingly, yeah, I never get sick. I have a physique I'm super proud of. I have great sleep, great sex, great relationships. I'm super thrilled about my life, but my wife and I just started doing a vocal transformation online program. Our new friend, Marin Azoff, who hosts these retreats, one of which was in Costa Rica that my wife attended, ayahuasca, but there was mostly voice activation and chakra alignment. And she came back and was so thrilled we enrolled in Marin's program, which is available at vocaltransformation.com, I believe. And the exercise is do basically 30 minutes of chanting for each of the chakras consecutively. So 40 days of chanting for the first chakra, then move on to the second chakra, etc., all the way up to the 7th of the 7 primary chakras. And the sound for the root chakra is loud. So you do that 108 times, which takes about 30 minutes, and you do it for 40 days, and then you move on to the next one. It's going to be most of a year that we're going to be doing this. But man, the stuff that's coming up for us about a week or two into this chanting practice, there's a lot of immune stuff coming up. There's all this like junk spilling out, emotional fits that we're having. It's wild. Plus we had the lunar eclipse a couple days ago at the time of this recording. But I think if you haven't listened to Marin's, heard her on Instagram or found her on her website, please go check out her stuff. She's on a couple podcasts. She's going to be coming on for a series of podcasts with me as well. But man, oh man, it's powerful stuff. Healing through resonance, especially when it's created with your own voice. So if I sound a little stuffy, that's why. I figure it's an opportunity to talk about somebody who I'm growing to love, this Marin Azoff woman. She's incredible. And this work is really powerful. So I've babbled on long enough. It's all, I wouldn't have brought that up if it wasn't directly related to a lot of insights I've gained from Paul and Angie Check that Heather and Karina are going to share as well, related to the chakras. So please enjoy my conversation now with Heather Harvey and Karina Krepp of The Way Holistic. All right, I'm joined by two people who came from a world that I'm intimately familiar with and friendly with, the Czech
Paul Check and Angie Check and Penny Check universe. One of the many sort of iterations of the type of work that you guys are doing is one area I think that's actually being underserved, so to speak, underemphasized, is this mothering the mother, mothering the child, mothering the relationship through these incredible transformations in life. So I'm joined by two people that have written a new book on, let's just say, mothering and parenting. And Karina and Heather, you guys are here to chat a little bit about The Way Holistic, this new book. And I want to say there's a lot of books. I've got about 100 of them in my house now. Why did we need another book on this topic? What do you think was lacking in this conversation?
You know, one thing that Karina and I focus on a lot is just the things that the stages that we've gone through as mothers, but not only as mothers, but as health practitioners and our own journeys and what that has given us for different stages of parenthood. So we're both mothers of older children now. And so we've gone through, you know, the younger years and the elementary years, and we're into, you know, I'm into the teenage years. Karina's an empty nester now. So it's not so much that I think we needed another book in this genre, but sometimes we just need the experience of like, look what this mom has gone through. Look what this, you know, the things that she's learned from her kids, the things that she learned work, the things that didn't work. And how do you embody that with taking care of yourself? And that's key with what we have found has worked for us is like, you have to put yourself first. You have to do the self-care things if you're going to be successful in the dream that you have as a parent.
Yeah.
I mean, I love that notion that, you know, we're giving from this future self. And really what I had so much pressure on myself as a young mother. I thought that there was a right way to do it. I was really hard on myself when I failed to do it. And I think that this is the book that I wish, this is not so much a parenting book. This is a parenting the parent in you book, because it's a lot of stuff that I didn't learn. A lot of stuff, just because my family of origin, they were healing their scars. I came into this mother archetype thinking that, you know, maybe I don't want to do that anymore. Like that wasn't great. Maybe I'm not going to do that as a mother. But then what was it, a polarity that I went to, or was it a rigidity that I landed in? And really this book is a structure to heal ourselves the way that we really can, piece by piece, moment by moment, and in little tiny bites. You know, I mean, how many times did I fail as a mother? Thousands and thousands. And I was just meditating this morning and I had to call my son and just leave him an apology text because I was thinking about something else that I thought, wow, that was really not great. And I'm so sorry that I wasn't who I am now, but I just want to let you know, now you're going to have to go back and heal that, my love, because that was bad parenting. Right. So, you know, I was really judgmental about myself, but what I really missed was a guidebook, just something that I could, and how much time do you have as a parent? Not a lot. Right. So Heather and I broke it down into like weekly chunks. Here's the theme for the week. Right. And I love this because we do this in yoga all the time. Here's your theme for the week or for the month. And now here are like 7 little things that you could do. Some of them take 10 seconds. Some of them you can do while you're driving the kids to school. You know, so the idea of incorporating this perspective to growth while we have these young people in our charge, and also just that forgiveness of like, mommy is so sorry. I lost my temper. I just lost it. Right. Yeah. And so I got used to hearing a lot of that. And like forgiveness and healing around that, and just normalizing the sense of like, you're not perfect as a parent. The look back's going to be kind of rough sometimes, but here's a guidebook. We'd like to help. That's it.
Yeah, I think it's really, thank you for sharing that. I really think that even when I look back at our births, our second was born at home, and I would say objectively we had beautiful births. But even in talking to my wife, I know there's a little bit of, I don't know if she would use the word resentment, but I sense a little bit of resentment because she felt very disconnected from me during our pregnancies. And it was partly because I thought I like the less I intervene, the better things are going to go. But she actually wanted to deeply connect in other ways that I just wasn't aware of until after the fact. So, excuse me, instead of beating myself up over it, now a big part of, my guidebook, which is in my online programs and whatnot, is really trying to teach people from the lens of somebody who's gone through and made a bunch of mistakes. So, people think you must have been the greatest dad, and you probably were so lucky to be there at the birth, and your wife must be so in such adoration of having you. And it's like, no, actually, she thought I kind of sucked. And that's just a part of the journey. Like, we're not going to get it right the first time, but we now can look back on our old selves and say, what was the book that I would have loved to have read that was never written? This is like a Toni Morrison quote. And if it hasn't been written, you have to write it. And so I'm glad you guys have written another book. I actually think it's also interesting. You have this dynamic where you guys are in both different phases of your life. And so there's a bit of a compliment there. So maybe to kind of kick the conversation off around some of the themes that are illustrated in the holistic way, which if you guys aren't watching on YouTube, I'm going to be popping up a bunch of little marquees here because there's so many ways to get in touch with Karina and Heather, as well as get access to their book, The Way Holistic. But the first question I really have is, and this comes up in a variety of different ways. Many of us show up in the world as a means of something having happened to us. We walk through kind of naming and blaming those powers, whatever it was that is there, are disabling us from living optimally. Can you talk a little bit about the victim archetype and how taking personal accountability for your role in co-creating literally anything, specifically in birth and in disease, but also in your role as a parent? You co-created this. So what can people like what's a first step in trying to acknowledge this archetype that so many of us are carrying so close to our hearts?
I think when it comes to the victim, it's something that is so easy to fall into. It's one of those archetypes that we learn from really early on in our lives, right from the first time that, and when you think of birth stories and stuff like that, birth in in an environment where the mother's needs aren't being met can actually introduce that baby to the victim mentality right from the get-go, because they come out and, depending on what the situation is, they could be ripped away from their mother because something's going on. They can be, a cord could be wrapped around their neck, and it's their first opportunity in this world to experience powerlessness. And that's really what the victim is all about. It's we don't feel like we have power to make our own choices, or someone's doing something to us that we don't get to control. And so we learn it really early on in life, and then it serves us in a way too, because sometimes it gets us what we want. It can put us in a position where someone is superior to us and they feel they need to take care of us or take us on. So in that modality, we learn that it serves us, but we also fall into the place where, oh, I don't have control over things. This is someone else can do something and it affects me. This situation can take something away from me. And so it gives us that sense that we don't get to choose, that we don't get to decide. And you see that a lot in just the way that we are so willing to back away from our boundaries, or so willing to not use the word no when it comes to certain circumstances, and just go with, whatever an authority figure or whatever a parent or whatever someone wants us to do, to make sure that we don't make things uncomfortable for anyone. And then you feel resistant, you feel resentment because you put yourself into that place of victimhood. So I've studied a lot of Carolyn Meiss's work when it comes to archetypes, and she talks about how, there's always a light and a shadow, and on the other side of the victim, it felt so is the warrior for me to be alone. The warrior is a place, and we think, where, oh, they're babies, they won't remember those things. This we're electric, we're energetic. That information is getting stored. This is happening. It's not, and nothing from the time of inception, but now this is to the time, the day we leave our bodies. I take my power back. Everything is there, and so if we have a traumatic experience as a
opposed to a birth experience
probably
that,
the most
we come into the world and we're on our mother's chest.
It's one of the steps that
and
moves
that
us
umbilical cord
from,
stays attached to us
being
for
a
a little
child
bit of time.
into
And we have that
an
loving
adult.
experience. It's
And
shaping
then
us. It's
that's
shaping
when life
how
gets
we
good.
view the world
That's
Yeah.
when
and
parents
how we
become
perceive the
creators.
world.
That's
Because
when
as
get to
babies,
say,
we don't have language.
well, I get
around
to
it.
look
No
at
one can
this in
tell
two
us
different
what's
ways.
happening. No one
And
can
with
comfort us with their
myself
words.
and
It's all
in
emotion.
the coaching that I
So,
do with clients, one
I
thing that I
think
find is
when it comes to
stepping out
that
of your
first
victim
experience
changes
into
trauma.
this world, it
Because when
sets
you
the
can
stage.
step out of
It
your
sets the
victim
stage
and
for what
instead of looking at
we will
traumatic
store in
events
our
that have
bodies
happened to
and
you,
some
there's
things
now
that we're going to
purpose
have to
tied to that
probably
trauma.
heal
There's a
later
reason
on
why you
if that
experienced
experience
it, and you
isn't
can find the lesson
ideal.
and the gift within it. And then that's the game changer. That's what makes us step into this place of, well, I can be uncomfortable in this, and that's okay. And I can move into somewhere where this has actually been something that has shaped me into who I want to be and pulling me closer to that dream.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like this is the message of our generation. We tend to get so accustomed to outsourcing our power that we fail to realize just how much power can be, what's the word? How powerful you can feel when you just start saying like, no, thank you, or setting emotional boundaries or whatever. But to a point that you made, Heather, and Karina, I'm going to ask you for an example of this, maybe in your own life, but there's a self-preservation that comes through this victim archetype. That's why it's so, like, we just love it. We just love thinking somebody else is responsible for every one of the problems we face on a moment-to-moment basis. If you were going to start assuming the responsibility, then you also have to take responsibility for the outcomes of your own decisions. And when you've shown up in the world, especially as a young woman, who then is thrust into the medical system, let's say in childbirth, and you're expected to now advocate for yourself for the first time maybe ever in duress in labor, I don't feel like that's very fair. Like, this work has to start way beforehand. And if you haven't, you didn't do it before birth, let's start to change that story. And let's see if we can reframe that story where we actually are accepting some of those responsibilities. And now that gives us the sort of agency to craft a future forward. But as long as you're stuck in that victim archetype, the ego just loves just staying put, right? At least I know how to deal with this pain. Whatever's to come afterwards is going to be uncomfortable, but that's the only way out. So Karina, I'd love if you could maybe share an example of this in your work, maybe with a client or even in your own life.
I love, this is such a powerful, because really what we're talking about when we're talking about our first birth story is moving from maiden to mother. And when we are afraid, it is very easy to go to our survival modes, right? And for me, victim was such a repulsive survival mode because of my family of origin. And just like to add some spice, my father was an OBGYN. And because of growing up in a household where you saw the humanity of the human, and then, at work, he was a god, right? He was the only guy in the area. And people would stop him at the dinner table and like, you saved my life. And he really did. And it was important work. And then when I got pregnant, I was very anti-Western medicine as a rebellion, just there you go, Nathan. Here's what you got to look forward to.
And I had to learn that I actually loved me on my own. And I learned that, you can fix that dishwasher on your own, and you can pay those bills on your own, and you can build a business on your own, and you can mother these children on your own. And the blessings and the things that I learned about myself,
tri-state area,
that's what healed me from that birth experience of being so scared to be on my own and be alone.
Annoyed me,
and bring it into the embodiment of loving myself and valuing who I was without needing the approval or the acceptance of anyone else in my life.
That's no longer there. It's been turned into condos. And in walks, here's my first moment of understanding my power. In walks this woman with a clipboard saying, we're studying the effects of 9/11 on the post-birth population in deformity and mental unwellness. I looked at my husband. I was like, get this woman out of my room. I was like, I'm a very, I grew up in Canada. I was livid. How dare you, in a moment where I'm at my most vulnerable, come in and like basically tell me, we just want to see how messed up your child is going to be because you lived in New York City during all of that. So that was the moment when I understood, oh, and she left. And I thought, oh, I have the power here. This is my space. And this is the beauty now of all the birth, I don't think my mother had a birth plan. The birth plan back then was Twilight, right? Like, bye-bye, mommy, we'll see you later. And so, but with the power of the birth plan and then knowing it's all just going to be thrown up in the air, the beautiful thing is that you are still at the center of all of it. I remember with my second child, I had him at home, and the doula said there was some problem. We were making baby soup. We were supposed to have the water. I was going to give birth in the pool, and it was hot. My husband had left the heater on, and it was really hot. So he had run to the bodega to get ice to cool down the pool. So, and I was ready to give birth, and the doula and the midwife, they just kind of sat back, and the doula turns to the midwife. She said, she won't give birth until he comes back, right? Because I was in control of that. And this is what we realize in this moment of like power. This is my body. We are co-creating this birth, me and this child. And here's how we're going to do it. So I think that the victim thing is played upon, if I may, very kindly say, with the, I know because I have a golf game. And so we're gonna just C-section you, right? I know that because I was on the other end of that conversation. And God bless him, he's no longer with us. Not to speak ill of the dead, but he just wanted to go play golf at a certain time. And so if it was going to be the full moon, which was busy, if it was going to be 3 or 4 pregnancies, he's going to schedule those births. And those women, I don't believe, knew they could just say no. I'm just going to wait it out. No, I don't want the Pitocin. No, I'm just going to hold here. Things will be fine. Right? Because why? Because we're afraid. So I think the victim thing is a really important point here. And this is what you're giving back to people, your work, Nathan. And I'm so grateful. And every time I hear what you're putting forward, I think, gee, I wish I knew that, but I intuitively did. So I'm just asking women, like, listen in. She's there.
Yeah, thank you for that. It's nice to get a compliment sometimes. It's really near and dear to me to, people are like, holistic OBGYN and all that. Like, I don't think people really appreciate what that means. Like, this is not just natural remedies. This is actually getting all of your shit together as soon as you get the glimmer in your eye that you want to have kids, because those kids are depending on you to model the world to them. And if you're the type of person that is going to blame the doctor for doing the unnecessary C-section, we have to ask who signed the consent form. But again, it's not like incumbent on a woman in the duress of labor to now have the faculties to make those decisions. It has to start in the very beginning in your relationship with your partner. When you say, hey, we're going to pull the goaltender or whatever, and we're going to maybe start trying to have kids. You've got to get a lot of what you're describing, this taking responsibility for how you show up. You have to start dialing that in right now. If you're listening and you want to have kids in the future, now's the time to start. The holistic way, or the way holistic, is going to be your guidebook. And we'll talk a little bit more about some of the things that you guys provide, but I love how this is going already. Let's move, since we're talking about childbirth. Heather, I'm going to start calling on you guys because you both probably have so much you want to say. So Heather, let's talk about birth in and of itself. You guys both have children. Why on earth should we even care about how a baby is coming into the world? Who cares? Healthy mom, healthy baby, right? What's the big deal?
I think this is one of the things that I've thought a lot about lately. And I was watching a video, and it was talking about basically the physics of what's happening when the baby is in the womb. And it was talking about the baby being in a deep REM cycle for really long periods of time. And the video was talking about how this REM cycle was basically the mother embedding information on the baby and growing the baby. And I started to think about this. And what came to me was that maybe it's not so much the mother embedding on the baby, but it's the soul of that baby embedding on that body. And so it's taking its past life experiences, it's taking its soul contracts, it's taking all that information and literally embodying itself within that little body that's forming. And so it's a really, really important time as that's happening of what's happening within the mother's body that is facilitating this, or is there things happening within the mother's body that is disrupting this? Like, is it a stressful time in her life? Is it, is it a pregnancy that was planned, or is it a pregnancy that has, caused stress on her in any way, shape, or form? And so that's all going to affect simultaneously what's happening, whether it be, the soul imprinting on that body, or whether it's the mother imprinting on that little baby that's developing within her. When you pull that into that birth experience, I have 3 kids, and I had very different experiences with each one of them. My first, and it's funny because their personalities go with how they came into this world. So my oldest child, she came in slow and steady. She took her time. It's like she followed all the rules and, came in when she should. And then my middle child, she's a feisty one. She was late by a couple days. And then when she decided she was coming, my water broke and she came in an hour. And it was intense and it was fiery, and we didn't think we were going to make it. Like, we had her in the hospital and we didn't think we were going to make it there. And to this day, she'll sit on something, but then when she decides she wants to do it, it's happening, and it's going to happen now. And then my youngest, I had him in more of a holistic setting, and he just came in, and it was my third. It was my easiest experience, and it was, he took his time, but not too much time, and he just kind of came into the world very calm, cool, and collected. And that would be him to a T. So it's funny how those experiences, their personality can be attached to them. But when there's trauma attached to that birth experience, that is something that they're going to pull into their life as well. So something with myself that I've learned over the years is I was premature. I was 6 weeks premature when I was born. I was really small. I think it was 3 pounds, 2 ounces when I was born. So it took me from my mother, and I went straight into the hands of the doctors. And then I spent my first 2 weeks of life in an incubator. And then my mom had problems afterwards and had an inverted uterus. And so she went into surgery. So the doctor's advice to my parents was, she's small, she has no immune system, don't touch her. Take her home, put her in her crib, and only come in to feed her. But then she goes back in her crib. So this was my first 6 weeks of life, was very alone. And when I think till the time I was 12, I had huge anxiety going to bed at night. So the idea of my parents leaving my room was more than I could handle. I was fine during the day. I could be on my own during the day, but at that night when the lights turned off, it was super, super scary for me. It felt like they shouldn't leave me. Like, don't leave me. I don't want you to leave.
Yeah.
And I can tie that right back into that experience. And I've healed that now because I know where it came from. I know I was loved. I know I was cared for now. But for that first probably, 25 years of my life, I didn't know why I hated being alone. Like, I didn't know why it felt so uncomfortable for me to be alone. And we think, oh, they're babies, they won't remember those things. Well, we're electric, we're energetic. That information is getting stored on us. And nothing from the time of inception to the time, the day we leave our bodies, everything is there. And so if we have a traumatic experience as opposed to a birth experience that, we come into the world and we're on our mother's chest and that umbilical cord stays attached to us for a little bit of time, and we have that loving experience, it's shaping us. It's shaping how we view the world and how we perceive the world, because as babies, we don't have language around it. No one can tell us what's happening. No one can comfort us with their words. It's all emotion. So I think when it comes to that first experience into this world, it sets the stage. It sets the stage for what we will store in our bodies, and some things that we're going to have to probably heal later on if that experience isn't ideal.
I love that answer. And I want to ask you, Karina, you're next. You're going to answer this one as well, because I actually think there's kind of like the meat of really of the why behind the way holistic is kind of wrapped up in what Heather's speaking to, I think, in the nature of this question. But Heather, before we go to Karina, I want to ask, in your early relationships, did you find that you found yourself in any sort of like codependency or any sort of attachment disorders of your own that you had to work through? And I don't want to probe too far. OBGYNs like to probe, but I don't want to go anywhere I haven't been invited. So.
100%. So my first marriage, so my husband my father, my children, and my 3 children, we were together for 13, married for 10, and we're not together any longer. We separated, or we've been divorced now for, 10 years, but something along those lines. That first marriage was the epitome of what you just said to me. It was codependency on this person that I loved deeply and was my best friend, but I was always searching for an approval there. I felt like I had to be a certain way. I had to do things a certain way. I had to earn his love. And no matter what I did, I never quite got the approval that I was looking for. And so it was this always me trying to conform to being what I felt was the perfect mother and the perfect wife and the perfect partner for this man that I loved. And I felt like I needed him to help these kids. I needed to be with him and have him in my life. And it's funny how life always gives you what you need, because my pain teacher had to teach me differently. My pain teacher had to teach me how to be alone. My pain teacher had to teach me how I don't need someone to thrive in my life, that it should be, I choose to be with this person. So that explains the end of my marriage. Basically, it was this, I would have done anything to save that marriage. I loved this person, but they chose otherwise. He chose otherwise.
Yeah.
And so I was right in the midst of being like, well, now you have to learn how to love yourself enough that you don't need love from someone else. Partnership. And I got a really good dose of being alone, because there was, a night here and there, or a weekend here or there, where I was completely alone. My kids were with their dad, and I was in my house on my own. And I had to be okay with that. And I had to learn that I actually love to be on my own. And I learned that, well, you know what? You can fix that dishwasher on your own, and you can pay those bills on your own, and you can build a business on your own, and you can mother these children on your own. And the blessings and the things that I learned about myself, that's what healed me from that birth experience of being so scared to be on my own and be alone, and bring it into the embodiment of loving myself and valuing who I was without needing the approval or the acceptance of anyone else in my life. So yeah, full circle for sure.
Well, and then the victim archetype comes up in there as well, right? This is all connected. I hope people are starting to gather that if you had, maintained and held on to that archetype, sure, you would have survived, but would you have thrived? And here we are, 10 plus years later. So I appreciate you sharing that, Heather. Karina, I want to ask, if you have any comments or insights based on what Heather has shared around the importance of how a baby comes into the world.
I think, what I have learned, and this is where my husband jokes yesterday, last week, 2 weeks ago, recently, right? This is stuff that the puzzle pieces are fitting into my soul recently, but it's all of the knowledge and education. So I say that in kindness to my earlier self, but also in kindness to people who maybe find themselves in a relationship that, is here to teach and maybe is no longer here to be loving. But Dr. Gabor Mate says something so beautiful about trauma. He says that trauma is like a water level. We always meet our match, and we match to the people who have the same trauma level. And that was true for my parents. My mother was an incest survivor, rape victim, and my father was his father died in the war. He was transplanted to 2 different countries, put in an orphanage. These 2 people were about the same level of PTSD. And
wow,
they did really well as immigrants in Canada. And, if you looked at our family and you could look back at these fabulous photos of us over time, we looked really successful. My dad was a doctor and my mom was a doctor's wife, and that in the home, they were acting out their healing. Every day was another opportunity, not always picked up, right? They didn't always meet each other and match each other on raising the vibration, to the point where my mother finally said to my dad, listen, you're not meeting, you're not matching, I'm out, right? And I think that that's not an uncommon story. And I think congratulations to my mom, right? Because she was elevated and he stayed stuck. And so what happened for my son, my eldest son, my first birth, I had this plan, like no interventions, don't give me any drugs, and then a regular heartbeat. Child is in distress. And I was like, what can we do? Like, what can we do here? There must be, this is a trauma moment for a mother. And so what was the intervention? Pitocin, because I didn't want anything else. And so here comes the Pitocin, and here comes that baby, nice and fast. Good thing, because the cord was wrapped around his neck. And every day on their birthday, I call them up and I say, happy birthday, would you like to hear your birth story? Because we were there together. It's something that we did together. And so I always tell them the story, and I embellish the day, and it was the most beautiful day in my life. But the trauma response that my son had, he is a very anxious kid. And I said to him on his birthday just passed, and we were talking on his birthday, I said, you came in, your nervous system immediately was traumatized. Not only did you have the cord wrapped, not only did you kind of come shooting out of my vag like on a speed track, shot that baby out so fast. I was really strong, because that was part, like I thought, I'm going to stay really strong so that, that's my part of this labor bit. So, out he comes, the episiotomy, ripped wide open, and he's jaundiced, right? And so off they run, they're going to take him off and put him under the lamps. I'm lucky enough to have had a partner, right? I'm ripped open. They're like, you cannot go anywhere. And so off goes my partner to put his hand on his heart. And, it's so beautiful, because my husband says he walked in and he was crying, and, the lamps, and what a traumatic beginning. And then my husband just said, because we didn't know if it was a boy or a girl. And so we had a boy-girl name picked out. And so he just went over and he said, Luca, it's your dad. And he just calmed down. Mm-hmm. And that is the power of the father in the birth story. And I think that it's important to know that, mom is busy over here, pumping stuff out. My sister's traumatized. She's never having children, honestly. She's holding one leg. My mom is holding the other leg. And my sister, has not had kids. So, I think that the whole event, it's a family event, if you're lucky enough to be there with other people. But I'll tell you the truth, anyone who's in the service of bringing babies into the world, they are your family in that moment, right?
Right.
My mother her middle name is named after the baby nurse, because my grandmother was so grateful, right? Because in that moment, the souls that are gathered are the souls that are welcoming this new life and saying, we're here for you. It's a crazy world. Come on in, right?
Yeah.
And so, but the trauma for my eldest son, you know, and we've talked, and he actually now, because he's just stepping into adulthood, he's finishing university, and you know, he said, yeah, I think I'm gonna talk about that, because it preset is, there's no doubt, it preset his nervous system to be right. He's on alert. And then my other son was born in the cull in our home. There was, we literally just gathered around, and he just slid into the world as soon as I was ready. And then, my younger son, he was down, my older son was downstairs while we did the birth part, because I didn't want to traumatize him. But we brought him up to see his baby brother. And then we let him cut the cord, because, you know, we kind of wanted him to be a part of the whole experience. So then my older son goes around for months telling everyone that he cut his brother's penis off. We're like, it's okay. Anyway, it's his umbilical cord. It was not his penis. We did not cut his penis off. But you know, how beautiful, because immediately his brother was there as we're washing him off. He didn't get carted off anywhere. And I was very lucky, right? Because it all went smoothly and well, and it was, you know, all in my home and just what we wanted. But those are two very different birth experiences, and those are two very different kids. And I love what you said, Heather. I do think they came to, and isn't it always true? Like Dr. Gabor-Mate says, we are here to meet ourselves, and whatever our soul contract is, to talk about Carolyn Meiss's work, is to preset ourselves. So I just want to take a little bit of the trauma away from any mom who's had a bad birth. Like, maybe that was your son's or daughter's soul contract, to have that beginning preset.
Oh yeah.
System. And that's part of their story and their healing journey. And you just got to be a vessel for the event, right? So it's so layered. And as a mom, you know, there's so much guilt. I mean, honestly, when I realized, I felt so guilty about my older son. I was like, oh my God, look what I've done. This was me. It was a bad birth. Honestly, I think it's serving him pretty well and who he's supposed to be. But now he needs to.
Yeah. There are two things that came to mind there for me. The first is this notion that babies don't have a say in how this goes. Like, when you attend enough births, you start to realize, like, you could do everything right. Like, I've got people who have $1 billion who are my clients, and they have all the money, they have all of the food, they have all of the movement, they've got 1 million different practitioners that are all there to work on the body and do all the things, and we still don't get the quote best outcome, whatever that might mean to them. And of course, you don't even need $1 billion. You could have a couple $100,000 income, and that's enough money to really have pretty much 99% of what everybody's trying to sell you. And the fact of the matter remains, no matter how much you educate, no matter how much you prepare, these babies still have something to say. So much so that I had a woman who came to me, and I've told this story before on the podcast, so I'll kind of make it short, but you guys probably don't know this story. The woman had a C-section, was beating herself up over it, right? Why didn't I should have advocated more. I should have pushed harder. I should have blah, 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 all these things that she's been telling herself. And so she went into like a type of regression therapy where she met her baby back in the womb, and the baby indicated down to her pelvis. I couldn't go through there, Mom. It was too scary. It was too, I don't know, there's something weird. And so she looks into her own pelvis from within her own uterus. Of course, the baby's in there next to her. I mean, you got to get outside of the box to imagine this.
Yeah.
And she sees like a cold, dark cellar, like a scary place that she wouldn't want to go either. And it turns out through that regression therapy, she had suppressed a whole bunch of sexual trauma she experienced in the past. And so the baby was like, I'm not going through there. I'm going to go out the other way. And is that still an option? You know? And sure enough, she had a C-section, and just unpacking in that way helped her appreciate that this was not her burden to carry alone. Yes, we have to get through all of the storytelling and we have to do all of that. But frankly, just knowing that, or acknowledging that maybe babies have some say in this, is actually like really inspiring. It's very optimistic whenever you start hearing those things. And then the next thing, and of course, I'll give you time to comment on this if you'd like, but the next thing is that if you study the work of Stephen Porges and the Polyvagal Institute and doctors Monique and in McIntyre, Monique Andrews and Tamara McIntyre at the Prana Foundation, they're talking about the application of polyvagal theory in this dorsal and ventral vagal component to the vagus nerve, which doesn't even completely develop until 6 months of life. And it's facilitated through the mothering and the co-regulation of being on the chest and being held. So that story of, I think it was it your story, Heather, of being in the incubator?
Yeah.
So not being held, not being touched, not being mothered or fathered or just touched and smelled and all those little whispers of sweet nothings we do to our babies is actually important to their health. Go figure. And so anyways, I just wanted to share those two little things that came to mind. Do either of you want to comment on either of those things?
I think that's so like, of course, and we know it, and now it's proven, but we know that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Heather. Did you want to add in?
So a totally different turn on it when you remember, because I think we already, it's instinctual that we know this, that we are at the helm, but our babies coming through us are, independent souls that are here for their own reasons and to have their own path. And so we're the vessel, but that's what our part in that. And they get to be the navigators, and they're going to have certain things that it is not our job to take away from them. It's not our job to save them from those things. And that's just means right from the get-go, right from the time they enter this world. It's not our job to heal their pain. It's just our job to help them facilitate how they take that on.
Yeah, just be with them, be present, love them. Just be with them. It's like therapy.
Yeah.
So let's jump forward to like your children are now in the world. And this is something my wife and I are currently dealing with, because as we're, bringing up the rear, behind you two, we've got a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old. And I really want to inspire this sense of personal responsibility and accountability in our children. And when I was a child, I was born in the 80s, you were in a 5x5, rubric, this gridded out classroom from 7 to 3 p.m. every day for 5 days a week for 12 years. And that was supposed to instill in me, I guess, an education or some responsibility in turning in homework. But frankly, I don't want my kids to go through that because of a myriad of reasons. So the way that I see it now as a parent is their education really comes in the home. And I want to inspire some of these principles that we've already been unpacking into them, but I don't really know where to start. Like given that you guys are ahead of me here, what advice do you have for me as a new parent?
This is something that it really gets my goat, that education system and what we put our kids through. And my kids have gone through the traditional education system because we live in a small town. The options are slim. Like we don't have a lot of options here when it comes to schooling. And I've watched, my oldest is in grade 12 this year. She's graduating. And so we've been spending the last couple of years, thinking about what's the next step, and watching her friends make this decision too. And one theme that I see in these kids is they're like, someone has made my decisions for me for 12 years about what I learn, where I go, when I show up, every decision right down to, can I go to the bathroom right now?
Yeah.
And so their autonomy has not been taught to them. They haven't had a chance to say, this is what I'm interested in. I would love to learn about this. Or, I really feel like I need to move right now, or I need to get outside in some fresh air. The expectations that the traditional school system puts on these kids is basically a way, in my mind, that we have disembodied our children, that we have disconnected the soul from the body, and they don't know how to read themselves or to even know themselves, because we've told them when and where, when they can go to the bathroom. We've told them when they can move their body. We've told them when they can get out in the sunlight. So these kids come out of grade 12 and they're like, and now we're dusting our hands, and now you make your life decisions and you decide what you do from here. And they're like, what do you mean we make our own decisions? What do you mean we have to figure this out on our own? And what do you mean do something that I love to do? I haven't done that for 12 years. And so it sets them up for basically not teaching them how to have a dream, not showing them the importance of purpose, not showing them the importance of being inspired in life. And those are the three things that I have learned in my life are the things that make me well. They're the things that make me excited to get out of bed in the morning. They're the things that make me a good mom. They're the things that inspire me and make me a good coach. And so this is what these kids need. They first need parents with direction, parents with purpose. And you know, you're doing that for your girls right now. You're showing them that you're passionate about something. And I think we all know that you actually have to care about something to be passionate about. If you've ever tried to like take on something that's someone else's that they really love, but you just really don't care about, it's really hard to show up in that way. So you're doing something that you're passionate about and you're serving in that capacity. That could be a lot of different things, but that example is huge for our kids. And then teaching our kids to know their body, I think is huge. Something that I advocate for my children all the time is, you know, if you need to move at school, stand up, stretch, move. If you feel like you need to get outside, raise your hand and be like, you know, I'm not. The thing about boundaries that we forget is that we can't expect someone else to honor our boundary. A boundary is something that we set for ourselves and have no expectation from someone else. So if I need this, I'm going to make this happen for myself. Teaching kids about soul connection from the time they're very little. This is something that I didn't have much knowledge on for my daughters who are a little bit older than my son, but this is something that I was able to embrace from a very early age with my youngest. And I swear that kid is like, he is wiser than most adults that I know when it comes to connecting to his soul and listening to what it tells him and listening to, you know, what he needs. And Karina and I work in an industry where we literally retrain people how to move their bodies correctly, properly, so that, you know, they're moving their organs, so that they're moving their, you know, they're moving their vascular system, they're connecting to their vagus nerve, all of these things. We're retraining people how to do that because I think the school system and just North American culture has right out. So if we can, even if our kids are in the school system, the North American school system, get them moving, get them to connect to their body, show them the importance of purpose and passion in your life, teach them the foundations of, you know, what does your body want to eat? When does your body want to eat? How much water feels good in your body? Does this food make you sleep well, or does it, you know, disrupt your sleep? When they have that connection and when they learn that from an early age, and the key is that they see you doing the same things too, because we can teach all we want, but if you're not practicing it, if they don't see their parents doing those things, they're like, well, I'm not going to do that. You don't do it. They'll call you out. They will call you right out on anything that you say to them to do and do not do. So it's those small and simple principles of, we're very instinctual creatures. Your body will tell you what it needs. Your body will tell you when you need more probiotics. Your body will tell you when you need more nutrients. Your body will tell you when you need more sleep. And if you learn to attune to that and keep attuning to that, then I don't think you're as affected by being put into that system of, you know, the 5x5 classroom setting, because you know how to regulate yourself and you've done it from a very early age. So then when you get to that time where the decisions are yours to make, you're not gonna feel like you're stuck in a box. You can move out of thoughts, and you can move into what is happy making for me.
I love that. I love that. By the way, there's a little bit of a camera delay right now on my end. So if our conversation starts to overlap a little bit, it's just because I don't know what's happening. I hear somebody doing construction behind me. I wonder if there's something going on with the telephone pole. But just so you're aware, the camera is going on and off. Anyways, those listening, you're probably like, get on with it. So let's get on with it. Karina, well, actually, let's take a very, very brief pause. Because speaking of kids, I hear somebody screaming right now. So why don't we just take a quick bio break and we'll be right back. Hey guys, it's Nathan. Wanted to interrupt this amazing conversation very briefly to talk to you, specifically if you're a birth worker. This goes for doulas, childbirth educators, midwives of all sorts, whether you're out of hospital or in hospital, and especially the OBGYNs, the family medicine docs, those of you who are attending to births. I want you to ask yourself, if a person rolls into your practice and they're in labor and there's a bud emerging from the vagina, what are you going to do? What I was taught to do was, let's rush you to the operating room. Forget about informed consent. We have to do this through the abdomen. We have to do a C-section because the baby is breech. But frankly, I think a lot of women, rightfully so, want to avoid C-section, unnecessarily, of course. And so if you were to just rely on let's say your OBGYN residency training, you're not going to have the skills to attend to a breech birth. The good news is most breech babies come out without any intervention at all. But in the rare chance that they have a nuchal arm or a hyperextended neck or whatever, you want to have those skills. And it requires practice on practice on practice to get those skills, which is why I started hosting an annual conference here in Louisville. And in 2024, we're going to be leveling up this entire program. This is the 2024 Born Free Twins Breech Conference, where you're going to be able to get plenty of simulator experience with very, very well-trained educators and instructors. You're going to hear from a variety of midwives and some doctors. This year, we're featuring the Spinning Babies team, Breech Without Borders team. Stu Fishbine's going to be there. Christine Laria is coming with the Breech Without Borders team. She was a recent addition. Caro Gauchi from the Pacific Northwest is coming. We're also bringing 2 keynote speakers, Machilo Motse, who's a newly crowned PhD from South Africa, as well as Doña Angelina Martinez Miranda from Cuernavaca, Mexico is coming. These are instructors that have quite a bit, a breadth of knowledge and experience in order to help round out your own education. I haven't even mentioned Tracy Vogel, who's an OB anesthesiologist. She's going to be coming in to talk about trauma-informed care. Hermine Hayes-Klein is coming to speak to informed consent. There is so much that we're offering here. And I've only gotten to the didactics part. There's going to be plenty of time to practice on very realistic mannequins. And there are going to be some other activities for you to do some healing and as a means of community building. So we're going to do some trauma release work, a musical odyssey with Rebecca Kelly G. There's going to be some ecstatic dance in the mornings. If you're open to that, it can be very, very releasing because we've suppressed so much of this stuff throughout our lives that if we can't use our voice and our bodies in an expressive way, it's going to become a second chakra issue. It's going to impact our reproductive organs and our overall health. We're going to be screening Aftershock and having a panel discussion with Shawnee Benton Gibson and Omari Maynard, both of whom were featured in the film because Omari's wife, who is also Shawnee's daughter, she died as the result of what I would call medical negligence due to the color of her skin in the medical system. And that's what Aftershock, the film, is all about. We're going to do a breath workshop with Sarah Tremoli of Effigy Breath. There is just so much healthy food, healthy community, healthy conversation in a very, very safe space. No breakout sessions. You're all going to be in the same room together in a very intimate setting, which I think is very, very important for this work. If you're interested in coming, go to bornfreetwinsbreech.com. Register as early as you can because the price will gradually increase as we get closer and closer to the event. There are a few opportunities available for work exchange for students or people who are otherwise unable to attend for financial reasons. But everything will be on site at the Omni Hotel in downtown Louisville, a beautiful hotel with some very, very beautiful meals and beautiful spaces that we're all going to be sharing together. I hope to see you in Louisville. The dates are August 8th through the 11th, with an opportunity to do either NRP certification or a simulator intensive workshop with one of our instructors on the 12th, if you want to stick around. And for those who stick around, maybe there'll be some other goodies along the way. BornFreeTwinsBreach.com. I hope to see you in Louisville. So, Heather, you very elegantly just sort of gave me a little game plan in order to approach this parenting thing. And I know a lot of new parents or soon-to-be parents are listening. And it's all great when we talk about, this conscious, gentle parenting and trying to give kids autonomy and doing all this. But frankly, it's hard as fuck. It is so hard to not be my dad or my grandfather or my uncle, who all modeled for me this sort of disciplinarian way of showing up. So, Karina, I want to ask you, and then of course, Heather, I'd love for you to circle back and give some comments if anything comes up for you. But this gentle parenting movement, I think, is in the right direction. But I also think that it really, really scorches my nervous system. I know my wife has we're looking for a therapist for our own nervous systems, because this is so hard to not just be do it this way or die. And so what experience, can you share with how to keep yourself regulated when you're really actively raising kids and they're not being taken away every day by a daycare, an underpaid daycare worker, or babysitter or whatever? It is really, really hard work. So how do we parents do this? How do we take care of our own nervous systems in the moment and over the long haul to make sure that this is a sustainable thing in our household?
I think it's, I sometimes see the modern parents parenting right now, and I think, oh, I was not up to the task. Because
it's really fair and honest.
Honestly, I grew up in the military. My dad, I grew up on a military base. There's right and wrong. It's black and white. Yes and no, can and can't do. And, I think one of the nice things about that system and that structure is it's a clearly defined line. And of course, then they're going to pick up the peas that you just asked them not to throw. It's food. It's not fun. And they're going to throw them down on the floor again. Right. And so, I saw this mother. Oh my God. I bought her a piece of pie because I felt I'm watching her parent in this new way, which she gave, boundary and consequence with 3 choices every time. And I thought, okay, so she's in public and she knows she's being observed. She was at a restaurant. But I thought that is not how I parented at all. Just to be clear, it was a black and a white, a yes and a no, one chance, depending on my mood, just to be honest, where was my level of, and then 2 chances if you're lucky. If you want another chance, second chance, maybe. But often it was just one. I said, don't do that. You did that. Now the consequence is that is taken away. And so what I love about this new parenting is I think, my kids would have felt more sense of power and control. We would have maybe not had so many full-on tantrums because they would have understood that there's a sense of a give and take, right? My system, this black and white, creates this sense of safety, or it did in my belief system. And this is how, I raise them. You're safe and secure. Here are the rules and parameters. These parameters keep us safe. And most of it, I'm not a big rule person. And, I have adults now. The rules in my house are take your shoes off and don't smoke in here. Those are big rules, right? If you want to bring a Coca-Cola into my house, you're going to get a look from me, but I'm not going to say you don't bring that garbage into my house. Okay. Because so you're an adult. Make your choices. So I don't have a lot of rules, but the rules that we had were to keep them safe. And my kids had hugely structured school days. Right? They were in a Chinese multicultural school, learning Chinese from Taiwanese. It was very structured during the day, and then they did parkour in the afternoon. And so that kind of the polarity of live within or learn how to thrive within this hard structure, which I felt like my rules weren't many, but they were there honestly to keep you safe. And then go into this place where you're told, hey, there are no rules, where, and that's terrifying, right? It's like, well, do you want to try and jump over there? And then, the kids are looking around like, Mom, am I allowed? Can you? Like this sense of like, you have no power, you have all the power. And how we do that in our day as parents, I think is really important. It's important to acknowledge. And there are situations where that's sharp, that's hot. No, it's just no. And so, I feel for the modern parent and the gentle parenting movement. I'm going to send anyone, send me a text and do I owe you pie? Because I wasn't healed enough as a parent that then. I think I could maybe do it with my grandkids to a certain point, and then I'd be like, no, Grandma said no. But I honestly, I think there's a point where a little too much is safety for the kids, right? Like, where are the boundaries? Is this okay too? Am I right? And same thing, when we talk about, your kids are young, but you're going to have the conversation about the internet and access to the internet and fun and like, oh, Mom, you're so rigid, and everybody else. Oh, you hear a lot of everybody else is allowed to. And like, so sorry, I always say to my kids, you picked me as your mom.
Yeah.
Can I tell you?
Yeah.
This was the mother you chose. And I firmly believe that. And, and we're going to co-create. And, that's where that push-pull is. But I owe people pie because honestly, I don't think I was up to it then. And with two young ones, I'm sending you pie.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Heather, I would love for you to chime in here as well, given that you guys both have some unique experiences. But I want to share that for those parents out there who think that there's this rigidity is the whole answer, and the total lack of rigidity is the other end of the spectrum, that's also the answer. I think they both fall short because kids crave boundaries, but they need to have broad enough boundaries to explore the world without falling into a fiery pit, right? Like we're there to keep them safe, but we're also not there to regiment every aspect and to say no, 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 and to suppress that voice, right? Which has to be later activated again, this fifth chakra. Like you don't have a voice anymore because you were never able to speak. You were never able to express yourself. But on the other hand, you do need boundaries. So yeah, this is resonating. Heather, do you want to add anything to what Karina has shared?
Well, I think even just what you just shared, Nathan, is that there's polarity in everything, right? And when you look at the world around us, it's like the male and the female, it's the moon and the sun, it's everything in the world. There's a polarity to it, but we can't be on one end of the spectrum for too long. Because that's where we get out of balance and that's where we get dysregulated. And I think parenting can be put on that polarity as well. There is that, we can be rigid at times, and then there's times that we're going to let them explore and let them explore their ego, because that's what they're doing in those moments, especially at that age, right? Is they're learning to separate themselves from us. They're learning that they are individual selves. And when I think back to when my kids were young, it's funny because they will always remember the moments you lost it. The moments where you lost it, they will hold on to that till like I was taking my son to school this morning, and he's like, Mom, do you remember that time when you got pulled over and you were driving so fast? He was 3. Like this was so long ago. I'm like, how do you still he could repeat to me what the police officer said to me. I tend to drive fast. My kids know that. It's very freeing for me. I love that feeling. But those are the things, like, they will remember those moments. They'll remember the times where you lost it. And one thing that I have realized, it's not because you did wrong. It's because you showed them that you're human. You showed them that it's okay to make mistakes. You showed them that it's okay to not be perfect. And that if mom's not perfect, if dad's not perfect, I don't have to be perfect either. And so sometimes in those moments, it's just remembering that it's okay to not be the perfect parent and not say the right things and to not do the right things, because that's teaching them something just as important as doing those right things. And you're showing them how life goes, and that there are times that, like Karina stated so beautifully before, the apologies that we have to hand out in parenting is there's a long list of them. And they'll have to keep coming, and we have to make the point of apologizing so that they know that we recognize that, yeah, we messed up, and we're not going to get down on ourselves about it. We're not going to beat ourselves up about it, but we are going to own it. And so in those moments when we recognize the polarity in it, and we find where we need to be within the middle of those polarities in those moments, I think that's when you're like, okay, is this a battle that I need to really fight? Or is this a battle where I instill trust on them by saying, okay, well, your room needs to be cleaned. And whether that happens right now or whether that happens, within the next 5 hours, I will let you choose, and I'll trust that you'll get it done. And I find with my kids, and right up to this point, if I give them those options and I give them the level that I trust that you're going to get this done, that gives them a sense of, oh, she's counting on me. And hold my integrity. They may not have that language, but it's within us. I want to hold my integrity, and I'm going to meet her on that. Whether I can do it right now or not, or whether I need to take some time away because my mom and my dad is driving me crazy and I don't want anything to do with them right now. But it gives them the opportunity to show up for themselves. And then it's a little more cohesive within that relationship as a parent with them. I'm finding the humor.
Yeah.
And finding, those moments where, they have so much in them. There's so much gusto in them, and they have so much life in them. And it's, when you can find that humor, it brings our nervous system down just a little bit, enjoying those moments. That's way easier for me to say with older kids than it is in that stage where they're young and you're done for the day and you just want to be done, and the day's not done yet. I remember those things.
Yeah. It's what I'm really gathering is I think a lot of people want like the quick fix and the silver bullet and these like, hey, here are 5 hacks to being a better parent. But really, it starts with just showing up and allowing yourself the opportunity to make mistakes. And it's almost like the inability or the disallowance of being able to learn as you're going, because there's no real, you guys have a book. There's Leonard Sax's work is great and Kim John Payne's work is great, but ultimately you still have to do it. Yeah. And even if you find the guidebook that was written for you and written from aliens that know who you are in the future or whatever, it's still going to require you to actually practice this. And any practice is going to come with, some pitfalls and some stumbling blocks along the way. And so allowing yourself the opportunity to just flow with it is actually a part of the proactive means of making this possible for your nervous system to withstand 18 years of, which oftentimes feels like hell. Like it sometimes is like, it's really, really hard. You actually got me sweating when you were talking to me, because I was thinking about what the 5 to 8 that 5 o'clock to 8 o'clock period is going to feel like, as it does every night. Like, I'm like, oh my God, I have to go in. We're going to go to battle, and I'm going to have to calm my nervous system and soothe my tone. And no, please do not smack your sister with a spoon in the teeth. Her teeth are gentle. Let's be gentle. I mean, it's just wild. Well, we've been going now for over an hour. I do want to talk about The Way Holistic, this book, but before we jump into that and your course, which is called the Nurturing Mothers series, I'd love for you to just define for people, what does holistic mean to you guys? And my camera keeps going off. Here we are. What does this term mean? Because a lot of people reach out to me and they say things like, yeah, I want a holistic remedy, or I want whatever. And I'm like, listen, like, we're not talking about the biohacks. We're not talking about the things that are advertised all over the internet. What we're talking about is you really embodying your full self. So how does this come through in your work? You're both Czech practitioners. You've both done quite a number of other certifications. What does that mean to you? Like, why use that word?
I think it's a word that is overused these days.
Me too.
You see it everywhere. And whenever a word gets overused, it really does lose meaning and connection to it. When I think of holistic, I've been thinking about this week, and it changed for me in the last little while what it means to be holistic, because I've in the past associated that with like the healing process, and combining the mental and the emotional and the spiritual and the physical, and looking something from that whole embodiment of those four things, looking at it from a sense of alchemy, where you're looking at the summer, the winter, the spring and the fall. And it really is the reciprocity of connecting, that we're not here on our own. We are here we're connected to each other. And even when you think of how we connected with you, Nathan, it's from this community that we're being connected through other people that we have connections to mutually. And so when you think of that from a holistic standpoint, and going back to what I was talking about, that everything falls on a polarity, not only when we're looking at things from holistic health are we looking at what we need to do to heal, and the steps that we need to take to create health and well-being within us, mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. But how do we embrace our pain? How do we embrace our trauma? How do we embrace when life doesn't go as planned? And embracing all our archetypes, but those survival archetypes, and find the beauty within them and be okay with that.
Yeah.
Be okay to be sad. Be okay to live in the mundane sometimes, and to live in, even, something as simple as disappointment. We always want to change those things. We always want to be better. But is there a place within the realm of holistic health that it's okay to stay here for a little bit of time, and to even regress, so that you feel where you actually want to be? And I think that is what's changing for me within the holistic world, is that embracing what is, taking it all in, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and seeing that as what makes you who you are, and makes you whole, and makes you progress into becoming that higher version of yourself.
I love that. I love that. Thank you. Karina, what would you add to that? This holism, this thing, everybody's using this word.
I prefer holism. That's such a nice word, because it hasn't been diluted as much. But I think what's so beautiful, Heather, that you brought up is this sense of the connectedness. Why did this happen? Why, the first question second question I ask my clients, if they know what their dream is, that's where we start. But the next question I ask, and what's so interesting is often people know the answer. I say, what is this pain here to teach you? And I think, I think back to all of the people in my life, the situations that, I couldn't wait to get out of, like just, why do I keep running into this personality type? What's the common denominator?
Yeah.
So
you.
So what am I supposed to learn here? So the holism part of it is, I approach the physical body much like I approached motherhood in the beginning. If I just learn the things, right, the places where, most people fail, like, and I do those things right, quote unquote, right, then it will be great or fine or excellent. And then as I worked as a coach, I was doing everything right and I wasn't helping people progress. And the reason, and same with as a mother, you end up in these kind of dead ends and you think, what am I doing wrong here? One of my sons, I was having such a second kid and I was parenting him like I parented my first kid. And it worked out great for that kid. And this kid, we were really missing each other. And I went for help because, hey, if you're having problems, hire an expert, right? In whatever thing. So I hired an expert and the expert said to me, you're the problem. And I said, okay, I believe that because this is a small child. He said he was a child still at the time. He said, you are very direct. And this person, this child of yours, does not like direct. He is much better at an oblique approach.
Yeah.
And so I actually had to change. So it wasn't working. So this holistic thing is like, yes, we have this group of things that are survival things on the base, and then these things that have worked for us in the past. Maybe it's our intellect, maybe it's our ability to charm people, maybe it is that it's nepotism or something else that got us in the door that worked in the past. But there's a dead end to that. And you're going to reach it at some point in your life. And in that moment, you're going to realize the interconnectedness of all of the things that your life has been trying to teach you is coming into this moment. And you could grow or stagnate. And that's what Heather and I tried to create, is this place where we're like, listen, there's going to be these points. And here's how we offer a growth. Because you may end up at that dead end. How to move forward. The holistic thing is like, okay, so you've tried this. That's the thing. Most of the people who end up on Heather and I's doorstep are people who have tried a whole bunch of stuff. It's not for lack of wanting or trying, but if you've tried a whole bunch of stuff, so now we know it's not that. Okay, so let's move forward. Right? And that's really where the holistic part of it is. And it's the same, I'm sure, for when people come to you, Nathan, it's not the top bullet points. We've done that. Yeah, no. Okay, let's look at this entirety of you. Let's look at what your fears are, what you were told, or what your beliefs are. And so that's, for me, that's where all of the puzzle pieces that finally come together. And again, I'm in my 50s. So, don't worry if you're not there yet. It's going to happen. It progresses over time. But if you're listening to this and, you're following Nathan, you are on the path. And here's what I really believe. If you're here and you're hearing this in your soul, it's because you're here for a purpose. And this is part of your foundation.
Couldn't have defined that better myself. I think that's beautiful. So you have a book out. Is it only an ebook, or is it also in print? Oh, there it is right there. Okay, great. So where can people find this book where they can go way deeper into some of these topics? And maybe you can also talk a little bit about your Nurturing Mothers series as well as we wrap up.
So you can find our book on our website, thewayholistic.com, and it's also available on Amazon. You can get it in hard copy, in paperback, and on e-version. the book is really what we wanted to do with the book is we wanted to make a living manual of something where you read it and then there's action steps that you can apply. So there's usually about 1 to 7 action steps at the end of every chapter that we cover, and it's about making the 1 to 3% changes in your life. Take this step, and this is going to get you closer to your dream, to your goal. And so some of them are bigger things, some of them are smaller things that you're changing on a weekly basis to gain that little bit of change each week, each day, that you're putting your mind and your awareness to what you're trying to create. Our Nurturing Mothers series is something that we are super excited about. And the reason why we decided to focus on mothers is because that's what we are. We are mothers. We are working moms. We have both gone through periods in our life of trying to balance those two things. We love what we do, and I'm talking for you, Karina, but we are very, very passionate about what we do as CHEK practitioners, as coaches. We are always in the midst of learning and growing and becoming better coaches. We thrive in that capacity. And sometimes it's hard to balance that with motherhood. They are both full-time gigs, and sometimes more than full-time gigs as parents, right? Like sometimes it has you laying in bed awake at night thinking about, what you can do for your children and the steps that you need to take and the things that you want to experience with them. And so we focus on this because we want to take some of the processes that a working mom, that a young mom, and that moms at any stage have to try and balance taking care of yourself, balance taking care of your family, taking care of your relationship, taking care of your career. And then also we have a huge chapter on archetypes because it's really, really important to know who you are from that innate level and not miss giving certain parts of yourself attention. Like if you have the athlete in you and you bury that in motherhood and work, there's going to be a little bit of you that feels like you're just not in alignment, that you're not living exactly the way that would be in alignment with your dream. And it will show up in some way, shape, or form, whether it's dysregulation in your nervous system, whether it's poor sleep, whether it's some sort of disorder or disease that pops up in your life. We can't bury those parts of ourselves. There's a time and a place for everything, but we have to acknowledge those things. And those are the first things to go as a working mom. I'm going to be completely honest there. We will push ourselves aside because society pats us on the back when we become the super mom and we do it all and we meet our children's needs above and beyond our own. We meet our partner's needs above and beyond our own. And then we show up to work and we're super human women taking it all on. So this is something that we've created where moms can gather as a tribe, which is so needed. And you see it in almost every other culture except North American culture, that women band together. And they band together to be supports, to instill that friendship, to have the wise women, to have the maidens, to have the wild women within that circle, because that's a very powerful, intuitive group of ladies that are going to support you for the rest of your lives. So this is a way that we want to give that back to women in this capacity right now, and to teach them to put themselves first so that they can actually show love and show up for their family, and then for their careers, and then for the whatever place, whatever role, how they serve, how they give back to the community.
Amazing. Yeah, I guess I'll just finish by saying it's that old sort of analogy that we always use on the airplane. You can't help somebody else with their oxygen mask if you yourself haven't started to take some deep breaths. And so this is really the way. You can't really be the best version of yourself as a coach, as a physician, or as a father or a mother if you're not taking care of yourself. It's just, there's no way around it. It's not a criticism. It's not a blame or shame thing. It's just reality. So thank you for helping to contribute to the health of new moms and new dads, or experienced moms and dads. I hope people will go to your website, which is thewayholistic.com. They can find the Nurturing Mother series there. Your book is called The Way Holistic. It's found everywhere. I've read it, guys. It is a slam dunk. It's one of the books you need to have, especially if you're coaching other people who are on this journey. So, Karina, Heather, thank you for spending some time for me today. Sorry about the internet issues. Hopefully it wasn't too much of a distraction on your end, but any final comments you want to leave people with?
Yeah, I mean, Heather and I were talking before the show, and we wanted to, because we think you do such important work, and the people who tune into your work are important in the world because they're in that second chakra creation mode. So we did want to put forward that for the first 20 people who sign up for our email list through our thewayholistic.com, we're going to send you the ebook for free. So all you have to do is write in the note. You just need to write in that this is where you heard us. And we're happy to send that out because we think you're doing really important work, and we're so proud to be a part of your tribe.
Wow. Thank you, guys. All right. You guys heard that. For the first 20 people who go to thewayholistic.com, sign up for the newsletter, and you're going to get a free copy of the book. Is that right?
That's correct.
All right. Just mention my name. Just mention the good doctor. I appreciate it. Yeah. When they're gone, guys. So head over there now. Thank you guys for spending some time with me today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.